On today's show, we look at the science of sharing and see whether DIY musicians can go viral.
This is 30-minute music marketing.
30-minute music marketing for musicians who want to get better at marketing their music.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hello, I'm Sheldon, and this is 30-minute music marketing, the show for independent artists and DIY musicians who want to get better at marketing their music. Sorry, it's been a bit of a gap between the last episode and this episode. You'll have to blame him to my left as you're watching this.
I was going to say you're on top, but that just sounds...
That sounds all kinds of wrong. You've been busy, haven't you, Greg?
Yes, I have. I have started up my own little Technique Tuesday session. So in terms
you'll
of
probably be able to we can stick a link to that in the show notes.
So that will be in there, and obviously kind of trying to make head and tail of what the hell is going on in the world at the moment.
Things are potentially improving with a view to opening up, certainly in the UK later in the year, but there's still a lot to play for and a lot of marketing to be done between then and now, and that's what we're talking about today. We're having a look at sharing, and we're going to see whether it's possible for DIY musicians that, can they create content, that's videos and songs, that go viral without the artists themselves having to do any marketing. Because what normally happens, Greg, is that you might release maybe a song or a music video, and what happens is you distribute it to your audience through whichever social media platform, and what will sometimes happen is that audience will consume it, they'll watch it, they'll listen to it, and then they'll just go, oh, that was okay, and then they'll move on, and then they'll just go on and do something else. And really what you want them to share it so that the distribution doesn't end with your fan. They share it and then they show it to their friends and colleagues and relatives, and they, in doing so, might do the same again. So wouldn't it be great if you could get your audience, without them knowing, to do your marketing for you? And I'm suggesting, I'm positing, is there a way that can be done? Can we reverse engineer music and maybe sort of music videos in order for that to happen?
So is this based on something you've been up to recently, or is this based on the research of someone else?
Well, a little bit of both, Greg. You haven't even got any show notes, and you're already asking the right question. So can I tell you a little bit about what happened to me and my band just before Christmas, right? We recorded a bit of a cash-in, a last-minute Christmas album, and I sent the album to one of my you helped greatly. I sent it to one of my national radio DJ contacts.
Are you going to mention the name?
No, there's no need to mention the name. And we released one particular single, and surprisingly to me, he didn't necessarily play that particular single. He just chose an album track as what he thought was the best track on the album. I mean, who am I to argue with a...
Oh, hang on. Oh, I remember this now. So this is... there was one song on the album that you went all out on. It was like a proper piece of a real challenge.
Musically multi-tracked, lots of musical sort of influences. And we recorded a last-minute throwaway complete... We didn't necessarily like it at all, but this DJ picked it as what he thought was the best track on the album.
Hang on, isn't this the same track that you went to Bernard after 2 vocal takes? That'll do.
Let's move on. We haven't got time to devote any of this, right? He thought that was the best. So I just thought to myself, well, if he thinks it's the best, maybe other people will as well. I spent not a great deal of time knocking up a lyric video for said song, and I put it out on our social media channels, and it went bananas. It went gangbusters, as the young people say, right? In terms of the reach it had on Facebook, it reached 850,000 people. It was shared 9,000 times.
Okay, but before... So this is purely organic?
Mostly organic. I was saving a little bit of, in terms of paid traffic, right till the end. But other presenters on the radio station, they picked up on it as well. There was a national news radio station who played it. It got a moderate amount of traffic on YouTube, 100,000 streams. But this is most interestingly for me, people ripped it from Facebook and started to distribute it themselves to their contacts in WhatsApp. And that's something that's never happened to me before.
Yeah, I remember you kind of saying, have you heard, and what was really funny, I think the day that you asked me about that, somebody actually WhatsApped me and said, am I responsible for that? Obviously I said no, and stuff.
Well, you were in a way, in terms of it was recorded in your actual studio.
But yeah, so
yeah,
I do remember that. It was a really odd one, because you're like, how am I finding out about this on this platform?
Yeah, and that's, as I say, something that's never happened to me before. Friends were messaging us saying, somebody, our works WhatsApp as just received this. People were downloading the video and uploading it to their personal Twitter accounts. They were basically doing the marketing for us. People were independently sharing this particular track.
So, quick question for you.
Carry on.
This is kind of in response to the last one that we did. So, in terms of trend jacking,
it was a trend jacking squared, I would say.
Do you think the subject matter on the song was the thing ultimately that people picked up on?
Well, as we discussed in our last episode number 37, trend jacking is important. It's not something you can do necessarily all the time, but we had two elements of trend jacking. A, because it was Christmas, and obviously it was the Christmas season, and it was a COVID-related Christmas song, so it had two elements of trend jacking. So there would have been an element of trend jacking responsible for certainly its popularity. But if you scratch the surface, there is actually a certain amount of science as to why people do share things on social media. Now, Greg, would you like me to refer to a New York Times report, which was completed about a decade or so ago, but its findings are still relevant. Okay. And in that research, they illustrated 5 reasons why people share stuff online. I'll list them all, 1 to 5. So point number 1 was to bring valuable and entertaining content to their friends. Right. Point number 2 was to define themselves to their friends.
Okay.
Number 3 is to grow and nourish even relationships. Mm-hmm. Number 4 was for self-fulfillment, getting a bit of a personal kick out of doing it. And point number 5, maybe not necessarily applicable to us as musicians, to get the word out about causes or brands that they believe in.
Well, so causes would be relevant.
Causes, yeah, you might want to support, your local independent musician, which could be ourselves. But let's try and sort of reformulate that and put that into sort of words musicians would understand. So let's maybe try and boil it down to three main points, right? People share entertaining videos and music because they like those videos and songs, and they think their friends would like it and appreciate it too. So, by sharing, you're giving a friend or colleague something of value. Yeah. In other words, plus, in addition, people do get a bit of a buzz from sharing stuff, and especially being the first to share something. Are you one of those people, Greg, that's spend a lot of time and see lots of viral things when they first come out on Twitter, and then when somebody shares a link in WhatsApp a day or 2 later with some viral video content, and you go, "Oh, please, I watched that 2 days ago. This is old news."
I don't so much with Twitter, but it was a little bit like that in my DJing days, where you'd get a record and you wanted to be the first person that kind of was spinning it, and then you'd kind of hear it and you'd be like, "This is so old hat. We were doing this last week," kind of thing. So
it is the same sort of thing. So if somebody likes something, then that does have a form of value. And by people sharing it to their friends and colleagues, then it's almost like them, giving them a gift. So, and also as well, people who share feels as though, they're doing friends a favor. The sharing in some respects brings them closer, because if you're giving somebody a gift with, an item that it has perceived value, it's just like, oh, thank you very much. Oh, I really like that. Like, for example, when I come round to yours and I give you I bring a cake or something, and it's sort of like, oh, I like Sheldon because he's given me a cake, and that brings us closer.
Yeah. I mean, talking of beverages and food, have you got any of that Lancashire tea that you've been talking about?
I might have some free tea bags I can deliver you. I know you go through a lot of tea bags in the studio, Greg. So
well, I've got like a 750-gram thing of Nescafe coffee at the moment. It's like challenge accepted.
Right. Okay. So sharing brings people closer, and people appreciate the gifts, be they tangible or intangible. So and lastly, right, so Pete, and this is probably one of the most important points, people use content in order and share content in order to define themselves. So sharing helps show people who they are. So if I share a particular music video or song, I'm saying to people, this song, I like this song. This song technically is me. If you cut me open, and if you were to see my musical preferences, you would understand me better by knowing that I liked this particular song. I mean,
it's a bit like the days of when you wanted to kind of get across some element of your personality. The only real way that you could do it when we were younger was through our music collection. It was like a stamp of identity.
And if you think about it as well, another sort of common example of that is just wearing a band T-shirt, whether it's the 1975 or Billie Eilish or Drake, AC/DC, Queen, whatever. By wearing that, that is a badge of identity. You're saying to people, look, I like Queen. This is me, and it may well be that it's a signifier to other people who like that sort of thing. So we do like to musically wear our heart on our sleeves, and when we're online, the online equivalent is by sharing the songs that you like and making people aware of your musical preferences. And it's almost like a calling card. You say to people, look, this is me. So that is why people share to a certain degree, because it helps other people identify you and your musical preferences, and it's you saying this is me. You can't physically look inside my head and have a look at my musical preferences, but you can gauge maybe to a certain degree maybe my personality by me showing you and listing the music that I like.
Just when you mentioned Queen about, I don't know, 2 months ago, obviously on some of the dating websites, I was chatting to a young lady who said she didn't like anything by Queen.
Oh, that would be a blocker. Move on. Is that a swipe left or a swipe right?
That was well, I'm sorry to hear that. Goodbye. How can you not like at least one song by Queen?
The whole point about Queen is that they straddle a variety of musical styles. There's a little bit of something for everyone.
I know, and to find someone who didn't like them at all, you're just kind of going, this isn't going to work. I mean, fortunately, they didn't mention James Blunt. Otherwise, that would have been a definite nail in the coffin.
I would have unplugged the computer and thrown it straight across the screen. Right. So let's move on from that. So we know a little bit about why people share and how that possibly relates to us as musicians. So let's try and sort of get a plan of action together, armed with that information, the questions that we as DIY musicians have to ask ourselves. So I would say to the audience out there, are your videos so entertaining that people will want to share them? We often go on this particular show and say that just in terms of the music videos for your songs, if you're doing some sort of playback where you're miming and doing some sort of, just miming accompaniment to a playback of your music, you really are underselling yourself, because people will watch it, will go, that was okay, and then potentially sort of move on. You're not giving people a reason to sit up, take notice. And the thing I always say is that you need to be remarkable. You need for people to make a remark and say, goodness me, what have I just watched that was so entertaining, mind-bending, shocking, controversial, outrageous, funny, that people won't be able to keep it to themselves. They will need to tell somebody about it. For the most shares, you've got to entertain people.
Isn't that what happened to Joe Wicks? The most watched video of Joe Wicks was when he farted
when he
live.
broke wind.
Yes, and it was just like you kind of going, oh, if I'd known that was all I needed to do, I would have done it ages ago.
So, in the past, what I've done is when creating a music video, I've tried to sit down and include standout moments that will get people talking, that that potentially might seem ridiculous or incredibly out of the box ideas, including our lead singer eating several members of the band. And the idea is, create these standout moments that are visually, entertaining and provocative, not necessarily in a controversial way, although it could well be, controversial to a certain degree, just so that people will sit up, take notice, and then go, my goodness, this is something that I cannot keep to myself.
Okay, so
yeah, so in summary, amaze people, entertain them, shock them, make them laugh. People will share it if they find it entertaining and feel as though their friends will benefit from watching it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to ask yourself, and this is one of the hardest things in the world, is, are you creating music so good that people will want to share it? It's hard for me to say, right, what you need to do is write a fantastic number one hit single, because that's hard. Writing good music to order is incredibly difficult. But the thing that you have to think is that if you're not creating music that's great, then it isn't generally going to be shared. There has to be something in the back of your mind whereby you go, right, well, to a certain degree, the quality of the music will in some way reflect how many times it will be shared.
To counter that, though,
carry on.
Could you still use the manual?
It's funny.
Would that be relevant even now?
The manual for listeners out there, Bill Drummond and Jimmy Corti, aka the KLF, around about 1988-89, wrote a book called The Manual: How to Have a Number One the Easy Way. I follow a Twitter account that used to tweet a line by line from the manual, but once it completed it now just tweets out random sentences 3 times a day. I think it would be it was certainly giving you rules in terms of maybe hit songwriting and how to market and promote and distribute your music, albeit from a late 80s context. I think that there's certainly still valuable lessons to be learned, and I think you can it's available as somebody created a text file of it.
Is it actually still out for sale, or is it no longer
it's no longer in publication or circulation, but, and I'll stick a link in the show notes, somebody put it as an archived text file for you to read. But lastly, the thing that I would ask our audience to ponder is that, are you creating music whose themes and concepts resonate with people? The sort of music where people can find themselves in it and say, oh yeah, this is me. And although it's a cliche, the example I always give is millions of people can find themselves in Adele's music. Can people find themselves in your music?
Yeah, that's a good perspective.
And if you do, then you probably got a good shot and a good chance of getting shared. If you're just writing songs on autopilot, which listening to a lot of music from independent artists seems to be the case. You're sort of writing songs to almost scratch an artistic urge. That's fine. I'm certainly not having a go at that, but you have to do that with a view to realizing that it may well be that you're not creating the sort of content, be it musical or video, that is automatically going to be shared. It's something that you might have to put sort of marketing spend or additional marketing spend in order for it to reach a wider audience. Because the great thing about sharing is that you're getting other people to do your marketing and distribution.
Quick question regarding that.
Yep.
Okay, which band has recently had a #1 album that I never thought would have a #1 album?
Oh, you're talking about popularity of charts.
Well, Mogwai.
I was just going to say Mogwai.
Yeah, Mogwai.
They're not 20 years.
Yeah. So if it's taken 20 years to get an album, that mean they're not exactly top 40 at all, are they? As a band, how's that got to #1, or is that just a reflection that the charts are a different place to how they used to be?
Well, the album charts and the singles charts are two entirely separate countries.
Oh, right.
What that probably is a well-orchestrated campaign that's centered around good, physical merch options. Yeah. And I'm not too sure what else they've been doing in terms of just general things within, I don't know whether they've been doing any, they've done TV soundtracks,
right,
and those sorts of things. So I'm not too sure what other additional activities they've been doing of late, but it just may well be that, I notice, I know this is getting slightly off topic, but Maximo Park, they released their album this week. They're selling it for £5, signed, with a chance to win a signed guitar.
That's all right.
Signed by the band. So they're making a concert and they're spending money marketing that price offer of a signed CD with a competition as well, obviously in an effort to get a good chart placing for this week. So again, it could just well be that,
and they're giving incentives to buy as well, aren't they?
Very much so. I mean, a signed CD at £5 is probably 50% less than I would normally expect to pay for a major band piece of merchandise.
Here's a question for you then.
Carry on.
If merch is so important these days, and almost like a conventional album sale, like CD, whether it be a single or an album, is considered merch, do you think T-shirts and sweatshirts would ever be included? Because to me, that's no different merch than a CD. Ultimately, it's still a band's product that is being sold.
When you say included in
what? In terms of sales figures. So for example, you're going off, they're kind of saying that CD sales and album sales are still count towards chart positions. But a lot of people are buying cassettes that don't have a cassette player, but that would still be classed as a sale of a song.
I think it is possible that there is one service provider who I think you can, it's almost like the equivalent of you can buy a T-shirt and they will give you maybe like a free digital copy of the album, and that would still count as an album sale.
Yeah,
I know there was one company, I think, based in America. I don't know whether their chart eligibility would be the same for over here, but yeah, that is a practice, and it certainly has been.
Because I don't know of the company personally, but they used to basically be a lawnmower company, and they would sell very, very expensive lawnmowers, but it came with a free telecommunication system in it. And the only reason that happened was because the tax on lawnmowers was different to the tax rate on telecommunication systems. So somebody found a loophole to basically sell very, very expensive lawnmowers.
It's a bit like, again, we're getting slightly off topic, but when people previously ordered camera equipment from Japan and what have you, and the customs declaration would be like it's a hard disk system. And that was just because there was different levels of taxation. But we're digressing. You know, at the top of the episode, you when I said I had 850,000 reach on Facebook, and I
asked whether it was organic.
Organic. No, I put a little bit of ad spend behind it. I only put about £200 or so.
That is for some people quite a lot of money.
It's quite a lot of money, but that was the entirety of the marketing budget for that particular song. But what you have to remember, Greg, is that if you've got something that you release online and it starts to take off, the one thing that you've got to do is you've got to put some more money behind it, because it's almost like it's an exponential multiplier. If you've managed to somehow crack the magic formula, and sometimes you do these things unwittingly, as I had absolutely no idea this song that I didn't even necessarily particularly like all that much would be loved by the general public. And for every sort of, I put almost a comparable amount of money on what was the official single from this album, and it did nothing. It did absolutely nothing. And I put a similar amount, as I say, on this album track, which was even only a lyric video, so it wasn't even that visually stimulating, interesting at all. But it just absolutely. So if you've got something that is reacting well with your existing audience, it's your duty to put a little bit of money behind it, because that little bit of money, its results will increase exponentially. And now, from the perspective of being away from it for a couple of weeks and a couple of months, I now think to myself, I'm going to struggle to have a song that resonates with the general public as much as this. What I should have done, I should have put a couple of grand on that, just to try and reach everybody, because I'm never going to have something that's so shareable again for I don't know when that's, it could well be that the next song that I release is going to have a similar effect. But if you've got something that you've somehow captured magic in a bottle and people are sharing it, throw as much money as you can behind it, because if you pay for it to be shown to somebody and they show it to somebody else for free and they show it to somebody else for free, yes, you're having to pay a little bit just to start that gentle push, but it's like a snowball that rolls down a hill. It gradually accumulates, and you don't need to spend that much for that ad spend to be multiplied 4, 5, 6 times and reach so many more people than you would if you just put some money behind a quotes normal song, normal video, and people they might like it, they might share it a little. If you find something whereby people share it a lot, for goodness sake, invest in it, and it will reap dividends.
The quick question.
Carry on.
Because obviously things are still quite uncertain at the moment. With a lot of bands are probably going to think, what's the point in spending anything when you can't go out and gig? I mean, is that... Well, I mean, how do you not argue with that, but how do you kind of say, well, look, it's a case of it's still worth doing because of X, Y, Z.
The major record labels made more money last year than they've made in several decades. That's without people, the artists themselves taking advantage of people. It is a statistical fact that people have listened to more music over lockdown. In fact, there are warnings that once we actually get out of lockdown, that people should be prepared for their YouTube numbers and their music streaming numbers to actually go down, because guess what? People will be out and about in the real world enjoying themselves, not sat on their sofas consuming content on devices. So, if we open up in 6 months' time, 9 months' time, in some respects, you've got to be ready to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And so what better time now? Because I'm working on the basis that it may well be that indoor shows might be allowed. We're recording this at the very beginning of March. I'm hoping that everything will be fine for October, he said optimistically, crossing his fingers. So I'm thinking to myself, right, I've got a good 6 months or so in order to increase the output and spend more on our online marketing to bring ourselves to a new audience and to remind our existing audience, some of which you might not have been in contact with us or listened to any of our music for a while, to remind them that we're still here. So I'm getting back to a 6 months nurturing stage, familiarizing people new and old with the fact that we are out there. We are sort of ready to go. So hopefully the moment where we do drop some new shows to be on sale, to be ready and for them to take advantage of it. So yeah, I'm spending the next 6 months in preparation for hopefully what is going to be a relaunch back into live music, into normal society. We can only cross our fingers.
Definitely. So is that today's 30-minute music marketing?
It is indeed. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to share it with a fellow musician, there'll be share buttons, like and subscribe, all that malarkey, ring the bell, tell your friends about us. And if you've got something that you'd like us to discuss and deliberate and cogitate and provide you with some form of advice regarding a music marketing related topic, get in contact with the show, pop something in a comment. Yep. Messages on the socials or the social medias, and we'll endeavour to have a little bit of a chat about it.
Okay, well, that is today's 30-minute music marketing, and we will see you on the next one.
See you next time. Take care.
Bye.